Hey there geeks and geekettes, this is something new. This is The Walking Dead Revisited. Yeah! So if you're unaware and are new to the channel or have stumbled on this video on accident, me and Mrs. Geek are massive Walking Dead fans. For me it's the comics and the TV show, and for Mrs. Geek the TV show. And I thought, since we're on lockdown, I'm not able to work at the moment, I thought I'd revisit my favourite show from the start and review each season. So I'll create a series of episodes. Obviously there's 10 seasons, so there should be 10 episodes. I may have to split later seasons into 2 episodes because the seasons get longer and longer. So at the time of recording this, I've just finished season 2. So this is Walking Dead season 1. So The Walking Dead is a post-apocalyptic horror TV series by AMC, and it originally premiered on October the 31st, 2010, and consisted of 6 episodes based on the comic book series created by Robert Kirkman, Tony Moore and Charlie Adlard. So the first series cast are Andrew Lincoln as Sheriff's Deputy Rick Grimes, John Bernthal as Shane Walsh, Rick's best friend and fellow cop, Sarah Wayne Callies as Laurie Grimes, Rick's wife and the co-parent of their son. So that's played by Chandler Riggs, who is Carl Grimes, obviously son of Rick and Laurie. It's Stephen Yeun as Glenn Rhee, a former pizza delivery driver, Jeffrey DeMunn as Dale Horvath, an elderly survivor with morals, and Laurie Holden as Andrea, and she's a former civil rights lawyer. I think I remember that right. The supporting cast are Emma Bell as Andrea's sister Amy, Norman Reedus as Daryl Dixon, redneck, aggressive hunter, but he does have a heart, Melissa McBride as Carol Pelletier, mother to Sophia and wife of all-round asshole Ed. Lenny James and Michael Rooker guest star as Morgan Jones and Merle Dixon, Merle being Daryl's younger brother, a violent, racist, volatile drug dealer, so he's a nice guy. Season 1 adapts issues 1 to 6 of the comic book series, which features Rick Grimes, who awakens from a coma after being shot prior to the zombie outbreak. Although the word zombie is never ever used in this show, I believe the creators described it as in this world there has been no zombie subculture, and the comic book was originally seen as a continuation of George Romero's Day of the Dead and Dawn of the Dead, but the comic book company wanted them to do something that they had, they didn't have to purchase rights to. So as I said, it's a 6 episode series. Episode 1 was titled Days Gone By, where Rick wakens to a world overrun with walkers. He wakes up alone in a hospital bed, and clearly some time has passed because the flowers that have been left for him are all dead. There's no power at the hospital. So Rick's obviously first thing is to try and get to his wife and child at their home, but instead discovers a fellow survivor called Morgan and his son Dwayne, and basically they fill him in on what happened from their point of view, because to them and the audience very little is known about what's happened. There is a section of this where there's a little bit of time jumping, post zombie apocalypse, pre-zombie apocalypse, and then back again, just to sort of fill in some backstory for Rick more than anyone, Shane, and obviously what happens after the coma. Rick decides he's going to head to Atlanta. Morgan decides to stay behind with his son. So Rick goes to find his family, and he's completely unaware that they are with a group of survivors led by his best friend Shane. On the way to Atlanta to find his family, Rick encounters a herd of walkers and becomes trapped in a tank. And that's where episode 1 ends. Episode 2 is titled Guts. Rick is rescued by a scavenger survivor called Glenn. And once he's rescued, they meet with other survivors where the racist Merle attacks a character called T-Dog. So Rick feels he's got no choice other than to take Merle down without killing him, and handcuffs him to the roof of a building that is being swarmed by walkers. So they leave him chained to the roof. They barricade the door, chain the door, so the walkers can't get to Merle. And it's basically T-Dog drops a key, so there's no malicious in it, because they do go back to retrieve him, or T-Dog does, but drops the key. And the rest of the group then make their way back to the rest of the group and to escape the city. Episode 3 is titled Tell It to the Frogs. The Atlanta group take Rick to the survivors camp, where Rick finds that Laurie and Carl and Shane are safe. Unfortunately, Merle's younger brother Daryl is also at the camp, and obviously explaining what's happened to Merle doesn't go very well. So Rick, then being a man of conscience, leads the group on a rescue mission to recover Merle and basically a bag of firearms that Rick lost while being chased by a horde of zombies or walkers. Obviously that was in episode 1. They discover Merle has escaped by sawing off his own hand with a hacksaw that was left for him. Why he didn't just cut his thumb off and slip his hand out, I don't know, because I'm pretty sure that would work. He then, through their investigation of trying to track Merle, because Daryl is a tracker, they find that he's basically stuck his stump to a hot plate to sort of cauterize the wound. Cauterize the wound. Go big or go home, I guess. Episode 4 is called Vatos, and the rescue group get into a confrontation with a group of Latino survivors who were not as bad as they first seem. In fact, what they're doing is protecting residents of a nursing home in Atlanta, but they also want Rick's guns. The situation is diffused peacefully by Rick and the Vatos leaders, and it showcases Rick's upcoming or developing leadership skills. He avoids the gunfight and even splits the guns with this group. Unfortunately, when the group are returning to the camp, suspecting Merle is going to return to the camp for vengeance, they arrive quite late to a camp that's got a group of walkers attacking. Andrea's sister Amy and Carol's asshole husband Ed are two of the sort of the bigger names of the cast that are bitten and die in this episode. Episode 5 is called Wildfire, and this is about the survivors burying their dead, and then they decide against Shane's judgment. And this is something that will rear its head for the next season as well, is Shane and Rick's constant butting of heads. And at this point as the audience, we are aware that Shane and Laurie have been almost living as a couple in secret. In Shane's head, he's going to take on Carl as his own. It's not as malicious as it sounds in the beginning, obviously, but when Rick turns up, it puts a spanner in those works. Basically, the group then go to the CDC facility, Centre for Disease Control, in Atlanta, hoping that there's answers there for them and maybe some sort of safety or even a cure. Some of the group disagree with the decision and leave, nobody major, but in a much later season we do find out what's happened to this group, but that's much later down the road. The group arrive at the CDC centre. They've got no food, they've got no drink, they're running low on weapons, and they're getting attacked by quite a big crowd of walkers. They assume the CDC is shut down until Rick sees movement on a camera and knows there's somebody watching them. At the last minute, the door opens and a guy comes to the door and basically says once this door is shut, it stays shut. The group agree and then they walk in, obviously being safe from being eaten. So episode 6 and this season finale is called TS19, which is what scientists have named the disease or the outbreak. So Dr. Edwin Jenner welcomes the group into the Centre for Disease Control, where the group enjoy luxuries of real food, alcohol, hot showers, and Jenner then explains to them everything he knows about the walkers, how the brain sort of reanimates, and shows them via a computer display. Then the group unfortunately discover that the building is set to self-detonate, and Jenner has trapped them all, thinking he's doing the right thing by allowing them a quick, painless death as opposed to living outside and getting bitten. While Jenner's got them trapped, Rick argues the case and convinces Jenner to let them go. Some of the group actually want to stay behind to die, and I think only one of them does in the end. As they're leaving, Jenner whispers something to Rick that we don't find out about until the last episode of season 2 or the first episode of season 3, I'm not quite sure, and it's quite a game changer. And then the group follow Rick, they leave the exploding building, and they leave the city. So that was my sort of quick rundown of each of the episodes. I was going to go into who directed which one, and then realised the video would be like an hour long for just a 6 episode season, and that's way too long. So in summary, for me, the casting of this was perfect. The non-comic book characters like Daryl, Merle, they really do help to flesh out a more real-world-based TV show. There's a wealth of character development, and each character is developed in such a way that you think you know who's safe of the group until somebody dies, and then you're like, this is one of those shows where anyone could die at any time. I think the plot device will keep Rick safe, that seems obvious from the beginning, but anyone else, you genuinely worry for them. The character arcs, Shane starting off as a hero, and by the end of the first season he's treading water into villain territory, but with reason. Most of the characters that die, that were obviously just created to die, it does feel worthwhile. They're not just there for fodder, they've got their own stories, backstories, development. You know, not everyone gets the same screen time, but it's well written and shot in a way that you're unsure of who is going to survive. Really does make you feel like nobody's safe. So the effects of the show, they were award winning. I think it was the highest viewed pilot ever at the time that it was released. The makeup and the practical effects on the walkers are outstanding. In later seasons they tried CGI walker effects and it looked worse than the real people in makeup and prosthetics. The prosthetics on this are absolutely outstanding. The show looks original, it looks grimy, and the first few seasons they shot on a different type of film, an old film. So even in HD you get that sort of fuzziness to it to sort of put over how bad the world has gone. And there's a constant sense of impending doom. There's a constant creep factor because you never know when a walker is going to burst around the corner. Because in the first season, it's not until you go back and rewatch it you realise how much faster the walkers were in the beginning, and the fact that they could use door handles and stuff, because they didn't quite, a lot of these people had only just turned and they still had some semblance of humanity in them for a small time. This first season was awesome for me. I watched it with my dad's. I didn't even realise they were making a TV series, even though I was a fan of the comics. I was reading the comics, and my dad was watching the 3rd or 2nd episode, and I sort of twigged at a few names because he just had it on the other side of a room from me, and I'm like, that sounds like The Walking Dead. He said it is. He didn't realise it was a comic book beforehand, and I didn't realise they'd made a show. So obviously went home then and started to watch and catch up. Especially after being a fan of the comics, I was hooked because I was quite aware there was some differences, namely Merle and Daryl, and the further the show goes, the more different it becomes. They take core elements, but they change. The cast in the show is different to the cast of the comics. There's different people die at different times, different people survive that don't survive the comics. So reading the comics doesn't spoil this. It only gives you a sort of an overview of what this TV show could be about. and that was even more enjoyable for me, that this TV show was more of an original idea based on something that I loved. There it is, episode 1 of my Walking Dead Revisited. So let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Is this something you want to see more of? I'm going to finish doing this Walking Dead Revisited since I've started it, but if this is something you want to see more of, I'm looking to do Sons of Anarchy, Game of Thrones, and maybe I'll just call bullshit on the last season. But yeah, let me know what you think, guys, if this is something you're interested in, me doing more in regards to sort of my geeky TV programs that I'm into. So please like, comment, share and subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. It does help me to grow the channel. I'm nearly at 350 subscribers, so when I get a little bit closer to 400, I am going to be running another giveaway. I've just got to work out what I'll be giving away. So thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed that, and hopefully I can do a few more things like this. I've been the Bearded Geek. Thanks for tuning in. Goodbye.